A while ago, I recorded a video called The Absolute Best Way to Study Openings, but in it, I made a crucial error, a decisive blunder, you might say, and that was I did not give you adequate advice on how to actually choose the openings that you want to study and practice and play. I just said, look at chess.com's library, look at Chessable, find one that you like. But how do you know what you like? Well, first of all, you have to experiment with that. You have to figure out your style. Do you like open positions, closed positions? Do you like aggressive gambits? Do you like kind of safe positions where you want to make your opponent make the first move and then you punish? Or do you like positional battles where you slowly try to choke each other out with like space on the board? So I'm gonna go through some openings and some moves and kind of just give you some brief overviews of them, and you can figure out like, oh, like this opening looks interesting. I might go into it a little bit more, and I'm just gonna kind of briefly talk about some of the motifs in some of these opening moves. Um, Hopefully that made sense. But first thing, do not pick an opening just because Magnus Carlsen plays it, right? You're not Magnus Carlsen. You're not playing against Magnus Carlsen, all right? And there's zero chance Magnus Carlsen is watching this video. So, like, don't play something just because Magnus Carlsen plays it. And if Gotham Chess or Ben Feingold or whoever recommends an opening and you like it, then yeah, study it. But don't just pick an opening just because, a YouTuber recommended it, all right? Pick the openings that you want to pick. And if somebody says, "Oh, don't play Sicilian unless you're over 2,000 because it's all theory," play this damn Sicilian if you want to play it. All right, there is a lot of theory and there are a lot of variations and it can be tricky, right? But if you want to play it, just play it. Play the openings you want to play based on your style, based on the amount of theory that you want to learn, right? This is your choice. Now, your opponent obviously has to play into these openings, so you want to pick openings that are more flexible or pick a repertoire that like you can cover 90 to 95% of what your opponent does, which is why my last video I recommended picking an opening for white, an opening for black against e4, and an opening for black against d4. And that covers 90 to 95% of all openings you're going to face in chess.com, right? You'll play against some monkeys who will do some weird things, but most people you'll be covered. So, I'm just going to talk about some nuances of the positions, and we're going to talk about open positions versus closed positions, and classic openings versus hyper moderns. So open positions obviously are when the board opens up, right? This variation is called the open Sicilian that I'm putting on the board right now. Um, this, this like gives white lines of attack on the king side. Your pieces can move, a lot of space on the board, but it also gives black a lot of counter attack, a lot of chances for tactics. A closed position would be something like the French defense, the advanced French. Now it's a little harder for black to bust out, right? Black has a lot less space to put their pieces. This bishop only has one square it can go, and even then it's not really that useful. Now black can play c5, and that's often a theme in the French to try to make some space, right? But black can just play c3, and I'm not saying this is theory because I don't know the theory because I don't play the French, because I don't like closed positions because I play what I want to play. Right, even this, like, white still has more space. Even though black now has opened up a file and it got a little more breathing room, white still has more space. And this is like kind of a more closed position. D4 openings also tend to be a little more closed. There's like exchange variations of the Queen's Gambit that end up being closed. London system can be closed. Let me just show an example here of how the London system can be a little closed. Usually there's C5, C4, this, which can open up position later, but sometimes the position just gets super closed here, and it's really hard for both sides to make progress pushing these pawns. So, if you don't like closed positions, play a more aggressive opening, right? And then talk about gambits versus non-gambits real quick before we go into classic versus hypermodern. Gambits are awesome, but you kind of have to study them And the Queen's Gambit's not a real gambit. You don't have to study that one. I mean, you have to study it, but like it's not like you have to like the Danish Gambit where like only one move works for white. Uh, but like let's look at the Danish Gambit, right? The Danish Gambit is a Giga Chad Gambit, right? White gives up 2 pawns for this fantastic bishop pair that's fully operational, as a Gadmator would say, and a great attack. And it's easy for black to fall into traps, to lose the queen, to lose pieces, to just have white just bust open the position. But if black knows what they're doing and plays properly, then it's really difficult. Then white's just down 2 pawns, right? It's difficult for white to just like, black can just kind of choke white out there. If black knows what they're doing and knows like the theory. But a lot of people don't know that, don't know this theory. So Danish Gambit, awesome opening. That's just illustration of like how gambits can get you in a position to attack. Um, there's also the Scorpion Horus Gambit, which is against the Karo Khan, which is pretty similar. Where if you gambit this pawn and you play bishop out, and if they play something like this, now you have both bishops out. It's not as Giga Chad as the Danish Gambit, and black's just ahead, but white does get an attack, and there are some potential problems. Like this bishop's pointing right over here if black castles. White can play this and castle queenside if necessary. White can get pieces out easy. So that's what Gambit's for. You're giving up material for activity and getting pieces out and maybe getting an attack. Now let's talk about classic versus hyper modern openings. A classic opening is basically like your typical put pieces in the center, develop your knights and bishops, blah 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 blah. How like the standard like Italian game, or Queen's Gambit, stuff like that. Hyper modern openings are where you don't control the center right away with pawns. You put pieces on the side to control the center, and then you strike back with pawns later. So let's like take a look at the Grunfeld defense, right? So first of all, this knight f6, the Indian game, right? The knight puts pressure on the center, but black doesn't directly occupy the center with a pawn like d4, d5. Okay, c4, g6, knight to c3, and d5. This is called the Grunfeld. Now, black does put a pawn here, but off the exchange variation, which is this line. Now white has the whole entire center, and it's a strong center, okay? It's a strong center. And make no mistake. But now black is going to try to undermine this strong center with a counterattack by playing something like bishop to g7 to get this c5 to attack this, and queen a5 to attack this and also pin it. And with those counterattacks, black can try to like counterattack white's center, win a pawn back, or win a pawn, or attack white's king. And that's the idea of hypermodern openings. Now, I will say this about hypermodern openings. They're a little bit harder to play for new players because it's really hard to get the timing down on when to attack, and it's really hard to like use fianchetto bishops properly as a low level, right? It's easy for them to get blockaded, and it's also pretty hard to like coordinate these positional things. Like sometimes opponents will just like push pawns in your face, and it's like you have to figure out how to undermine them properly, and that can be a little tricky for newer players. So hopefully this video was somewhat educational for you. You learned a couple things about openings and have ideas on like, maybe I want to play a hyper modern opening because I like the idea of counterattacking. Maybe I want to play a closed position because I like the idea of choking my opponent out, But you play what you want to play. Look at courses, look at studies. I might like put some other like opening videos here. I'm gonna put some in-game videos here. Yeah, if you disagree with anything I said or have another comment, please leave a comment. I appreciate the dialogue, and I'll see you in the next one.